For years, we've accepted a mathematical absurdity as totally normal. You can walk into a store and buy a brand new cotton t-shirt that was designed in Europe, stitched in Bangladesh, shipped across the Pacific, and delivered to your local mall, all for less than the price of a local cup of coffee. This chart shows exactly how unusual that is. Since 1990, the Broad Consumer Price Index, a measure of the overall cost of living, has shot up by about 140%, tracking this steep upward trend in yellow. But look at the orange line for apparel. While the cost of almost everything else doubled, clothing prices stayed almost perfectly flat. But that era of frictionless, disposable goods just hit a hard wall. Millions of shoppers buying directly from ultra-fast overseas retailers are suddenly encountering unexpected fees at checkout and severe shipping delays, thanks to a wave of sudden border friction and active customs enforcement. The United States has rolled out aggressive EU import taxes, implementing a 10% baseline tariff on goods from all countries and up to 34% on imports from China. When you apply those raw percentages, a standard $80 pair of imported jeans immediately jumps to over $100 at the register. We are losing the invisible discount of globalization. The decades where things got cheaper year after year were not driven by permanent laws of economics. They were driven by a fragile, specific alignment of global forces, and that historical anomaly has officially expired. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, organizations like the WTO and regional pacts like NAFTA aggressively slashed tariffs. They dismantled economic borders to build a global supply chain where components and finished goods could cross oceans with virtually zero tax penalties. That open border framework is being reversed, most visibly with the death of the de minimis loophole. For nearly a century, this rule allowed millions of low-value international packages, anything priced under $800, to bypass U.S. customs duties completely. Now, that exemption is gone. Closing that loophole leaves retailers with millions of dollars in new shipping and duty costs. Because profit margins in fast fashion and discount goods are already razor-thin, brands cannot absorb these fees. They're forced to pass the exact dollar amount straight to the consumer's online cart. The free trade framework of the past 3 decades has effectively been replaced by a deglobalization tax. It systematically raises the absolute floor price for importing everyday items. This diagram maps out the Toyota-pioneered just-in-time supply chain model. The entire philosophy hinges on moving parts directly from suppliers to production with zero excess inventory, stripping out warehouse costs to keep final prices incredibly low. That system is efficient during normal times, but the global pandemic proved it is exceptionally vulnerable. When factory lockdowns and container ship delays hit at the same time, the lack of backup inventory caused entire industries to halt production almost overnight. This table breaks down the shift to the just-in-case model. Priority shifts from lean inventory to maintaining heavy safety stock. Implementing this requires massive investments. Companies are hoarding buffer inventory in domestic warehouses and contracting redundant suppliers just in case one fails. Having a redundant supply chain means you won't walk into a store and find empty shelves during a crisis, but it also means manufacturers are paying a premium to run those backup operations, and that built-in cost of resilience permanently raises the price tag. The plunging prices of the last 25 years required one specific input above all else: an incredibly cheap, seemingly inexhaustible reserve of bottom-dollar human labor, largely located in developing Asian nations. As those manufacturing hubs spent decades building global goods, their own local economies grew. Living standards improved, and wages naturally rose alongside them, steadily eroding the ultra-cheap financial math that originally built the modern offshore model. We are also seeing the decline of monopsony power, the economic condition where a few massive Western brands are the only buyers, allowing them to dictate rock-bottom prices to desperate overseas factories. With global competition and consolidated factory hubs, suppliers now have the leverage to demand better margins. The alignment of cheap energy, wide-open borders, and incredibly cheap labor has reversed. Because those specific geopolitical forces have unspooled, the baseline human cost of making consumer goods has risen, and it will not return to the lows we saw in the 2000s and 2010s. Politicians often justify import taxes by claiming that tariffs will force manufacturing back to domestic soil. sparking a massive renaissance of high-paying, working-class factory jobs. The operational reality is entirely different. When major global brands construct new domestic factories to avoid import taxes, they don't hire thousands of workers to sit at sewing machines. They deploy advanced robotics and extreme automation to offset high local wages. This leaves the public in a paradoxical position. The physical factories might actually return home, but the millions of human jobs won't come with them. Consumers are left to foot the bill for higher domestic production costs, without the economic boost of a nationwide wage boom to help them pay for it. We have officially entered an era where consumer goods are structurally more expensive and supply chains are more volatile. Expecting prices to eventually fall back to normal is a misunderstanding of how the underlying mechanics of the global economy have permanently changed. The habit of buying massive piles of $5 shirts, wearing them twice, and throwing them away relied entirely on that old system. As base costs rise, that hyper-disposable consumption model is becoming financially impossible to sustain on an average household budget. In response, we are seeing the rise of a counter-trend defined by the resourceful consumer. Shoppers are pivoting toward repairing goods, engaging in secondhand resale markets, and prioritizing long-term item durability instead of a cheap initial price tag. The age of cheap everything was quietly subsidized by a sprawling, highly fragile global web. Now that the web is restructuring, we have to transition away from the expectation of absolute abundance. We are entering a reality where we buy less, buy better, and finally pay the real mathematical price for our goods.